BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today, on the Dear BAMf podcast, we're chatting with Natsuki. Natsuki is the head of portfolio platform at DNX Ventures. She joined the firm in 2015 and built the firm's operational process by leveraging her network within the venture world. Since then, she's been focusing on building the firm's portfolio platform team, where she supports early-stage portfolio companies. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dear BAMf, the podcast for PR marketing pros such as yourself. We have a lot of questions for today. Natsuki, thank you for being on with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we got some juicy ones today. So let's start it off. First question, Dear BAMf, funding announcements. What is working now amid COVID and 2020? My CEO was saying he wanted to get something in, quote, print and online for our latest round of funding, which is under $20 million bucks. I almost laughed when he mentioned, quote unquote, print for a magazine too. As it has been more than a year since I did a proper funding announcement, what advice for expectations do you have?
Sure. My advice for marketing and comms professionals at startups, when the CEO has this unique and specific request like this, is to bring her back to the original goal on why we want to do this announcement and who the target audience is, so that we can come back to how later on once we get on the same page with the CEO. So I personally never have used print media for startup fundraising announcement, but there might be a reason she or he wants to choose print media. So besides everyone's go-to online media outlets, we can also use TV interviews, for example. That could be a great way of reaching out to a different set of audience. So I'll go back to CEO and ask why.
Yeah, ask why. The other thing too, to oftentimes point to when someone says, "Oh, well, I want to have X." It's like, okay, great. Well, show me other examples of X. Just show me examples, and it will be impossible. I will tell this to find in, let's say, Fast Company or Inc. or Wired Magazine a headline that says, "Oh, so and so company raised $20 million this month." No. Now, why doesn't that happen? Well, in magazines, they're planned months in advance. So you never see a piece of quote unquote hard news like that. That just doesn't happen. The only thing that you could hope for in something print, if your CEO is that adamant, is it has to be in a daily, like the Wall Street Journal, like the LA Times, let's say. And only if there is a ridiculous, monstrous story angle here that isn't about your funding number, because you're not SoftBank, you're not Airbnb doing something here. This is not a unicorn announcement with ripples across a whole entire industry. So it has to be tied to a momentous piece of the industry or why this significantly matters in order to get to any of those national publications. So it sounds like to me in this question, the CEO is quite unaware of the current landscape of funding. It's also not 2002 when maybe 20 million was a big number. It's just not anymore. It has to tie back to the industry and how it's changing things. And then even what is the bigger story angle of this? What does this mean for, let's say, a global market? Or what does it have in implications with COVID? Did you close this funding in a ridiculously fast time? And that's something that stands out, maybe because your product is so hot and you were able to just do a bunch of Zoom meetings with investors and they loved it and they closed it. And that was a record thing. So there's a lot to dial back here, but the expectation of something in print in a magazine, absolutely not. And then for print of a funding announcement, you really need to see, well, what's so interesting and inspiring and juicy about that for that to even be feasible in a daily.
Totally. I think best case scenario for this comms person is to make the CEO realize that by themselves.
Yes, if they can. Well, that's why it's always great to go back and say, "Oh, well, yeah, go ahead, show me in a magazine where that's actually been announced. I want to see, because I haven't seen that." And then when there's no evidence to be produced, then that's exactly your answer.
Yeah.
So we just had a potential client talk to us today, and they say, "Oh, why is Wired on your long lead list here?" I can do that in 3 days. I said, great. I wish you the best. I wish you the effing best because that's amazing. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that. That's my other favorite answer. I'd love to see that. You show me when you do that. Talk to you later. Okay, here we are. Dear BAMf, I had an embargo issue and now I'm unsure what the best protocol is for the other media that had the scoop. Here's a tough one. Okay, for some context, I'm the head of comms at my tech company. We had a piece of sizable news under embargo that accidentally leaked in a notable newsletter. The reporter apologized for the error and took down the leaked news in the digital link, but the news is still in the original newsletter. What should I tell the 20 or so other journalists that had the news under embargo? I don't want to burn their trust, but I'm unsure if any care about this newsletter is here, even though it is well read on the fintech industry that we are in.
First of all, I'm very sorry this happened.
Yeah.
Embargo always makes me nervous, no matter how many times I go through it. And in this case, sounds like the accident happened because of the reporter's mistake, and it was not the control of the company. It was out of control. And the most important thing, I think, is to communicate with the rest of the 20 reporters with honesty. There's no other way. That you cannot change what happened. As a head of comms at startup, you will need to keep good relationship with the reporters in the long run. So by communicating what happened, you may lose a couple of reporters for this announcement, but keeping a goodwill with them is more important than just a single announcement, in my opinion. Also, I'll be very careful with talking with that particular reporter who accidentally leaked the news going forward.
You're gonna think twice, yeah, next time. Yeah. So I'm on the same page with you. You just have to immediately, I wouldn't waste any time going back to all the other journalists and just tell them what frankly happened. It was a mistake. You don't need to name names or anything, although people will obviously see, but yeah, total mistake. So sorry. Please proceed with the news. At this moment too, this person didn't ask it in the question, but at this point, put it up, put it out. It's already out. So it's a little difficult to now request from anybody who otherwise has the embargo to say, oh, you know what, but let's just still go with the same embargo date. And like, no, it's clearly now out. It's there it is. And so apologize profusely and hopefully, fingers crossed, never have it happen again.
Right. Yeah.
That's all you can hope for, I think, in that.
Yeah, this is the only thing that I can say. Like, this is just a nightmare for PR.
Yeah. And people make mistakes. So, hey, but yeah, you hope never again. Okay. Dear BAMf, next question. I have a client that really values our partnership, but since COVID hit, hasn't had the cash flow they originally anticipated when engaging with our agency. We've made do with what we have in the budget at 1/3 our original retainer, but they have some big industry news coming up in Q4 and refuse to increase the budget to give my team more time to handle the announcement properly. How would you approach this conversation with them? And if they continue to refuse to increase the budget, what elements would you put on their plate to give your team time to execute the media outreach? Oh, I feel like this is a very classic situation.
This is a really tough one. Look, like 2020 has been very difficult for everyone, period. It was a tough year. And it's actually very generous of this agency that they only ask for 1/3 of the retainer. And that must help a lot for that startup company. Here, I would consider two things. The one is, how much do you want to keep the relationship going forward?
Ooh, yeah, good one.
And two is what your agency's cash flow situation is. So let me break down those two things. So the first one, if this client is a really important client that you really value and you believe that they would come back after COVID, you may set the cost aside until this Q4 announcement. However, this is a huge risk that you're taking. And you may not be able to afford that if your agency's cash flow situation is tight. So this is like something that you really need to think about. But that's one thing that I would think first. So let me give you an example. So there's one agency, it was not a PR agency, but there's some other agency who I worked with in the past and I really liked, who delayed the due of the retainer fee for one of the startup company during COVID time, because the company was going crazy and then people were laid off and all that stuff. So the agency said, like, come back to us, like we will continue working for you, but you can pay us after you come back to the healthy cash flow. So that showed us a lot about the agency, and the relationship with the startup company became stronger than ever. But again, this is a risk that you're taking. Yeah, I'm not saying that this will necessarily lead to the happy ending all the time, but this is my 2 cents.
Yeah, I do like, so I'm on the agency side, obviously. I do like that you make it a point of question of what's the value of the relationship. Have you been with this client for 2+ years? Have you already been through some ups and downs? Are you their true partner? Can you weather the storm alongside of this? Now, we don't know from the question if this person has the ability as like a decision maker within the agency to say, hey, client, we got to call it or whatnot. But I'm going to assume they do, because they're talking about how to deal with this situation on the client side. So let's just assume that. But I think an internal review does have to be done to go, okay, is this serving us, and can we weather through this? If the answer is yes, we want to keep this client, we want to have this relationship, we do feel that it can be done, I'd be hesitant to do the deferral payment, because I think then you get that client that's like, ooh, in debt. And sometimes that is just, it's not good, and it stresses the agency. So I wouldn't go with that, but that's just me personally talking from BAM. So there's plenty of places that would be like, you know what, yeah, we'll defer, payment or something, or, oh, we know the startup has lots and lots of funding and they're going to come around. Who knows? I don't know exactly, but that's what I would say. As it relates to then just the reduced budget, if the answer is yes, we want to remain in this partnership, then clearly, very clearly say, okay, client, here in bullet point form is what we're going to do, and here's what we suggest you do in order to make this happen. We can't do 120 hours of what's required here in our estimate, let's say. We can do 50, which is what your budget allows. Okay, here is then what you're otherwise going to do. Spell it out for them, basically. If you're going to be a partner with them, I'd spell it out and say, hey, here's what we have to do. And the surprising thing might come about here where they go, oh, wow, now that you really spelled that out, this announcement is so significant for us, et cetera, and so forth, that they go, okay, we're going to ensure that we get extra budget to do this right. You might be surprised. And you're not looking at their bank account. So who knows exactly what's happening with budget and so forth, even though this is a very tough year for folks. So maybe that being that transparent with bullet pointing, here's the amount of time we believe this will be, here's the amount of time we have so we can do this, here's the remaining other things that will need to be done. You guys can take it. Great. That might sway things. If anything, it'll give them hopefully an extra added piece of trust in you as the agency, that you really, A, know your game and know what you need to do here. And 2, you're just not leaving them on a lurk. You're not just saying, yeah, well, we can't do that. It's too small to forget it. And it's really murky. Like, well, what exactly can't you do? What can you, tell me what I can do, basically, in whatever time you have. That's what you kind of want to get to.
That's true. I think one thing to add is that I would also challenge the client. Like, if you can increase the budget, is it really important for your company? And then what are the highest priority for your company right now? So that we can, and then agency side can allocate the team's time accordingly. So I think you can turn this into an opportunity to clearly stating the priority between the clients.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, good luck, person. Yes. Okay, last question here for the day. Dear BAMf, I had a client recently terminate our contract early because they wanted a PR agency specifically focused on servicing their industry, a niche security vertical. Our agency serves a lot of different industries on top of being quick learners. So I was confident at the start that while we haven't worked with a client that does exactly what this one in question does, I knew we would be successful. Sure enough, we exceeded expectations, but clearly there is room for improvement if the client left. What do you recommend doing right off the bat when working with the client in an industry you're not familiar with? Ooh.
This is frustrating.
This is very frustrating. Yes.
This is also a typical show me the results before I buy your product kind of mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
And then like VCs and startups are to blame. So we have this mindset of show me the results first before paying for you.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought that one of many things that BAM does really well for the clients or potential clients is that start sending useful information for the clients, regardless of the retainer fee or any official relationship that you have with the clients. When you started talking with the clients, you just send the useful information such as the latest news in the industry or the reporter's contact that you have in the industry. It'll show that how knowledgeable you are in the industry, even you don't have the actual client in that particular industry. And then the client side started to use that information and then, hey, this is useful. And then it's good to keep the relationship with this agency because even they don't have the past clients, they seem very knowledgeable about this industry. And then we might give a try. So actually, that made it really easy for me to convince my firm and my partners to start working with a small project with BAM.
Mm-hmm. Yes, full disclosure, we work together, so everyone knows. Yes.
Yeah, I might be biased, but
in case you didn't pick that up, people listening, but yeah, exactly. This happens handfuls of times, and we'll have a potential client come to us and they'll go, oh, well, you haven't had experience in satellite imagery that's looking at cow herds and how that has an impact on the land density. We're like, yeah, no, we haven't, because that's very specific. But oh, well, we've had space clients and we've had ag tech clients and we've had a ag tech focused one on herds before, whatever it is. And so you so often can't point to that super niche thing, but you have stuff around the sphere of it that is usually compelling enough. Typically. And then for this person who's dealing with this, one question we always like to ask for our founders or even the person in the trenches who's running the marketing is, hey, what do you guys read? What do you read every day? What are you listening to? Because we want to be reading and understanding the same stuff that they're seeing and understanding. And beyond that, but we at least want to cover our bases with, we're up to speed with exactly your industry rags or your industry trades that you live and die by. That's absolutely important. We probably are going to have to pitch those, of course, too, but we just want to be on the same page with the lexicon and the materials and all that good stuff. So I think just for this person, a good question to ask is like, hey, client, yeah, what do you guys read every day? What Twitter handles do you follow? What are you looking at? We just want to know. And then make sure you do all that stuff. As soon as they say like, oh, I follow these 10 people. Great. You follow those 10 people too, immediately.
and then plus some other people.
And then more people. Yeah, exactly. And add to it. Natsuki, thank you for all your wisdom. Thanks for being on today. We covered the question batch for today. It's not all the questions of the world, but at least it's the good ones for today. Thanks so much. This was fun.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMf, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show is created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Milan. Thank you to our podcast production team at Citizen Recording. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, please write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMf. Don't forget the F. We'll be back next Monday with another episode of Dear BAMf. Until then,